So the question is, do chains actually stretch? I get this question sometimes, and in big picture, just looking at it, you could say they stretch, but actually they just wear out. But I've got three chains here. The bottom chain is a brand new chain. The middle chain there is about 75% worn out, and this top chain here is so worn out it's worn off the gauge. And that's the little part chain checker tool, and I've got all three chains laid out here so you can kind of compare the three. The two top chains are actually 2 lengths longer, but you know, by kind of working them, if they're fixed one end and you push and pull, you can really feel how much slack is in the chain. Kind of helps if they're clean and dried out, but you can always measure this on your bike or just kind of see, and I'll go through a few different ways of determining if a chain is worn out and how you can actually measure that. So with these stretched out little line, you can see that's where the actual chains from end to the end there. New chains quite a bit shorter to get worn a little further. It's still a usable chain, but it's getting near the end of its lifespan, and the top chain there is worn basically off the scale of the gauge. And if you were to ride that chain for any amount of time, you're going to really wear out cassettes, chain rings, things like that. And I've got a few examples of those here in just a bit. But really the parts, I've got one here that's pretty worn out, and so I'm just taking it apart. You can kind of see all the little internals and bits and pieces and such there. And so basically you got the two inner plates, the two outer plates, a pin that connects them, and then the rollers that go over each of the two inner plates. There's a little lip that the roller just sits on there. And so you know, the parts that actually wear, you're going to have some movement there, but you know, kind of the inside parts of the plates where that rubs up against there, that's going to wear a little, where it, you know, has a little side to side movement over time. And then you've got your pin here. You know, I think you get some of the wears on the pin, and then I think the majority of your actual wear, that hole just starts to enlarge where the pin goes through there in the two inner plates. And then over time, you know, if you pull end to end over a long section of chain, you'll start getting some slack within the chain there. So that's you know, that's what causes the chains to wear. And you know, if you have a worn out chain and you just continue to run it over time, it will wear out the you know, like I say, the cassette and chain rings. You know, and you get some side to side wear there too if you have a tendency to cross chain a lot, which I'll get into that in another video. This is really just more to identify the wear, but you can see the side plate there, how it's worn inside, kind of some witness marks there. So you know, that's kind of how you get into that. Some ways to measure your chain. If you don't have a little chain checker tool, you can basically measure from center of a pin and go over the length of 1 foot. If the pin that lines up there is further than 1/16 of an inch out, then your chain is worn out and needs to be replaced. And we use these at the shop. And this is another different bike that was totally worn off the scale, and small ring there is fine, but the big ring, that's the one that got ridden in the most. And you can see how sharp and pointy and worn out those chain rings are there. You know, kind of another way, if you just, you know, you can see kind of some daylight there if you have the chain laid over the rings and you pull up on it. That's another way you can tell. But you know, ideally, if you replace your chains regularly, you can normally go through maybe 3 or 4 chains to a cassette. You know, lifespans of chains is, I don't know, on average maybe 2,000 to 4,000 miles, give or take. You know, I've seen them ruined in one event, you know, a long gravel race in the rain, you know, and you tear one up in one event, you know. So you can see that cassette, it's got a little lip there where the chain digs in. That's what wears them out. So anyway, that's the gist of it. Hopefully you found the video helpful. I've got a couple links here on installing chain and cassette. So yeah, that's gonna do it. Thanks for watching.